Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's joining us on this great webcast today. Welcome to this interesting discussion today on how third-party logistics companies can leverage technology to build a competitive edge. Today's topic is competitive edge for 3PLs through digitization with the goal of reducing costs and acquiring customers. And we got a really great team to discuss this from both Mazars and Ramco. We'll get to them in just a second. My name is Joe Lynch, and I'm the founder of the Logistics of Logistics podcast, and I'll be moderating this discussion today. So, since we have so many people joining us from different parts of the world, we want this to be an interactive session. So, please let us know where you're joining us from today. I see Jamin Alvarez. Jamin, where are you joining us from? So, I should also say I'm in Michigan, about 50 miles from Detroit, kind of close to Ann Arbor. Where are the rest of you from? I got somebody from Boston, Mass. Brian, thank you for joining us. And I've got Esty. She's from London, UK. Welcome. Yeah, we've got people from India and the US on the telecast today, so we know about time zone differences. So keep those comments going. I want to know where you guys are from. We got Travel Some from Canton, Ohio. Thanks, or Travel Stone. Thank you for joining us from Canton. So let's go and introduce the guests who will be discussing today, who will be speaking today. So we got Michael Rofman from Mazars, and we got Sheldon Parker, also from Mazars, and we got Rajesh Kumar from Ramco. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Joe. And let me start off with saying that I'm very excited to speak today about technology and logistics. And I'm here out of New Jersey, for anyone wondering.
Yay.
I'm Michael Rofman, a partner at our Mazars USA firm in our manufacturing and distribution group, known for my expertise and passion for transportation and logistics. Mazars is a high-performing accounting and tax consulting firm with significant national presence in strategic U.S. geographies. Our dedicated professionals have leveraged technical industry excellence to develop customized solutions for clients, creating value and optimizing their performance. As the independent U.S. member firm of Mazars Group, we deliver seamless access to the expertise of 24,000 professionals in 90-plus countries.
Sheldon?
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Hi, everybody. As Joe mentioned, my name's Sheldon Parker. I joined Mazars in April of 2019 as a manager in our management and technology space. I specialize in supply chain strategy, cost reduction, and process improvement. I've led global cost reduction initiatives surrounding supply chain, process improvements, and reverse logistics, while partnering with business units in Brazil, Mexico, Switzerland, to name a few. I currently still serve our country in the United States Army Reserves inside of a transportation unit, and I'm very excited at the opportunity to collaborate with everybody today.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. Rajesh, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Thank you, Joe. I'm Rajesh Kumar. I represent logistics practice at Ramco Systems. I've been fortunate to be associated with technology and logistics domain for the last 2 decades, and I've also had the privilege to work for some of the largest logistics organizations in US. I currently manage the consulting and program management functions at Ramco, and my focus has been to support logistics organizations to initiate and sustain their technology investments and digital transformation initiatives to automate and optimize their operations, and also to innovate further. We do it with the help of an end-to-end integrated system, which was conceptualized, designed, and developed exclusively for logistics companies. I'm excited to be part of this, and thank you everyone for joining.
Yep. Just want to remind everybody, we want to keep this interactive, so please ask some questions as we go. But before we get into any of the questions, Michael, if you don't mind, give us an overview of this industry. I know that's a big mouthful, but please give us your 2 cents on what's happening in the 3PL space right now.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. So warehousing and storage services industries continue to experience strong growth. The last 5 years have contributed between 4 to 7% annual growth. Economic uncertainty was less of a concern in recent years. On the other hand, the trucking industry has had a rocky couple of years with big swings up and down. As manufacturing output and consumer spending increased, we saw a big decrease in vacancy rates for available warehouse space. Shifts in global manufacturing has forced supply chains to reshape, creating growing complexities in demand for logistics services. As demand for e-commerce continues to rise, and we're certainly witnessing that during this pandemic. For instance, we've seen a big spike in popularity for online grocery shopping. Industry watchers expect online grocery to double in the growth rate. I guess we'll have to wait and see. According to Armstrong and Associates, revenue for value-added warehouse and distribution services increased 8% in 2018, and then another 9% in 2019. With these levels of growth come the challenges of productivity and profitability. As your customers look for ways to minimize inventory levels, to free up working capital, the logistics industry has been reshaping as well, with cross-docking programs by eliminating space requirements. And so the pressures to improve productivities continue to rise and keep mounting to maintain a competitive edge with pricing. Seeking ways to lower operating costs with investments in technology and automation are one of the best ways to achieve productivity gains by reducing labor costs or better space utilization. I've seen many mid-market and large corp logistics companies experiencing difficulties with having separate legacy transportation management systems, warehouse management systems, separate rating and billing systems, ERP systems, and the list goes on and on. The lack of having a central integrated command creates added layers of operational inefficiencies. So adoption of automation technologies and robotics in tight labor markets are the reasons of needing these types of investments. Here at Mazars, we help clients measure the ROI on these investments and make quicker, faster decisions because we're in an industry and business world that demands it.
I love it. So, Michael, I heard one of the things you said in there was you talked about real-time profitability. Could we get you, better yet, let's have Sheldon expand on that topic a little bit.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Joe. So with real-time profitability, some of the challenges that we're seeing within our clients in the logistics industry is the ability to make real-time decisions. Most of that inability is because of the lack of technology and reporting. This reactive approach is really hurting smaller organizations' bottom lines. So they need to be able to decide quickly and effectively. It's actually paramount to the overall success of their organization. Most of the issues that we're finding or running across are legacy ERP systems. They just lack the agility required to assist the business.
Yep. What I heard from both Michael and I also heard from Sheldon is that to get that real-time profitability, so I know I'm making money today, not finding out next week that I didn't make any money, is I need the right system. So Rajesh, why don't you talk about how Ramco helps customers get that real-time profitability or lack of profitability?
Thank you, Joe. Real-time profitability is a greatly desired capability for logistics companies, especially when the 3PL industry operates at a mediocre margin of 10%. It's important to have tight control over the profitability so that it doesn't dip further and hurt big. Companies have long established reports and complex dashboards to review the profitability. However, they have limitations. These reports are inconsistent in terms of their distribution logic. When I say distribution, I'm talking about distribution of the cost and revenue across shipments, locations, and orders. And two, at best, these reports and dashboards project what happened last week, not what's happening now. In Ramco Systems, to address this challenge, we have built a library of dimensions, financial dimensions. When I say dimension, it's an entity by which a logistics company wants to see the profitability. Customer is a dimension, service is a dimension, subservice is a dimension, location is a dimension, vehicle is a dimension, order is a dimension. So we have built 25 such dimensions as part of the system, which means the real-time multifaceted profitability analysis is available as part of the system and not as a report, which you will have to wait until the operations are over and launch. I will show a small video which depicts the profitability screen in Ramco Logistics system, and that will provide a quick overview as to how we provide a real-time profitability analysis. I will move to the video. Yes. This video will show how the profitability could be reviewed by various parameters in it. We can search for the financial dimensions. As the first parameter, we will select a time range. I will select a 6 months horizon to see how I performed in those 6 months in terms of my margin. When I select the time range for 6 months and select search, the system will show the profitability. And the last 6 months have been profitable for me. It shows the cost, revenue, and profit. Similarly, now that I've seen for time range, I can see for a customer. I would like to see if a certain customer is profitable. I can select the customer ID. I say search. The system will show the profitability for this customer. Yes, great to see that it's a profitable customer for me. And finally, I would like to see another parameter, which is I would like to see a specific order to know if it's profitable. I will select a transportation booking, provide the booking reference number, and search. The system will show the profitability of the order. Unfortunately, it's a profitable order for me. So that's how we come up with 25 dimensions. So I showed 3 parameters here, but the users of Ramco system can select as many as 25 dimensions and see their profitability. And most importantly, real-time profitability is not only about the capability of the system to compute the margins. It's also about the capability of the system to capture the ad hoc cost incurred during the operations, which will eventually impact the margin too, such as ad hoc expenses incurred by the driver during the trip, or the cost of consumable spent on repacking an item in the warehouse, which wasn't originally planned, and feed this information into the profitability calculator right when that happens, so that real-time profitability analysis is a reality.
I think when we talked about this offline, the idea of real-time profitability, you can't have real-time profitability if your system doesn't have all the information on it and if it's not fast enough. And what we're talking about is integration of all, of one system that has all the information. So a question popped up here. It says, can you please share some simple ways to measure profitability by customer? Michael, why don't you take that one on?
Thanks, Joe. From my view, there is really no simple ways to take on customer profitability if you don't have it. And the reason being that is that legacy systems that are in place now with transportation management systems and warehouse management systems and the way that they're set up doesn't allow for that easily to get information out of it, because you have instances where you have common services from different segments of your operations go into one customer on one invoice, and therefore the revenue is easy to identify with what segment is generating that revenue, but the costs are really where the challenges are. And as Rajesh mentioned, there's ad hoc costs that occur on within real time. So to capture that within legacy systems is really a challenge. As you continue to improve and find ways to capture data and pull it out of your system, the information that's there, you'll find that there's a lot of information, and doing something with that information is really what the activity is. Many of these systems, you have to do it offline. You have to pull it into a report in Excel and do analysis based off historical information that you gather. So you're not getting a real-time profitability number, but even getting to that number is a challenge, because all of the costs that you have and are accumulated are shared. So you really need to build up a good standard cost to identify how to allocate those costs to your customers. Now, the challenge is that you have goods in all different types of movement that takes place. It could be in truckloads, it could be in pallets, it could be bales, it could be boxes, it could be just about everything. So coming up with the smallest unit of measure and being consistent with that would be the way to go about it outside of the system. But having the right technology and platform in place can really simplify that for you.
Absolutely. And, I think we also talked about this when we were prepping for this, is the idea that you need to be able to have the information available that day, that minute, to make these decisions on profitability. When you find out a week later that, I should have done something different, that's a real challenge. So One other thing that I know this is going to come up, so why don't we address it right now? Reverse logistics has become a real big deal in this business. I can speak for myself. I bought a lot of stuff during the COVID era. One of the shows that I had, or one of the shows, one of the stores I went to quite a bit to buy shirts closed, so then I was buying them online, and it was wrong. I kept having to return it, and I kept thinking, what a pain this is. Now, great. I got a question related to this from Brett Johnson. He said, should you outsource your reverse logistics to a 3PL? If so, what are some of the SLAs that should be considered? So, Sheldon, why don't you go first, then we'll hear from Michael and Rajesh.
Okay, perfect. So thanks for the question, Brett. I always like outsourcing your reverse logistics approach because most 3PLs have the warehouse footprint and the labor capacity to process the various returns volumes that come in. You're not too sure when there's going to be a peak return volume or not, so they have the capacity to lift or reduce as needed with their labor. This helps clients not worry about staffing management during these peak return volumes, as 3PL can shift their resources inside their warehouse quite fluidly. Uh, the SLA that I always recommend is the return processing time. Your customers shipped you a product back. They expect a refund in a timely fashion. So you got to make sure that you're measuring that and being able to hold your 3PL accountable.
I love it. Michael, what do you have to add to that?
Well, with the boom of e-commerce in the last few years and even the last few months, so did the reverse logistics, which has become its own supply chain. The need here is to have a tight process-driven value chain in order to minimize the cost burden, because shipping accuracy is most important here, and that could help minimize the returns.
Yep, I love that, and I would also say, and this is a little off topic, but I think these companies have to get better at understanding sizes. When I think about this, or I hate to buy shoes online because I'm used to trying them on. So I think as people start to get those reverse logistics costs, they're going to say, "Whoa, we got to get a little better at sizing." Rajesh, talk about how a good system can help with the reverse logistics process and meeting some of those SLAs that Brett asked about, or measuring some of those.
Certainly, Joe. I will take a step back. Reverse logistics is a long-standing pain point which has been magnified by the e-commerce boom. The return rate, especially in e-commerce purchases, is about 3 times to 4 times higher than it's for brick and mortar purchase. And today's impulsive and fickle customers are going to drive the trend upward. While this presents a huge headache for the retailers or shippers, this also presents a revenue stream, a potential revenue stream for logistics service providers. A word of caution, returns are not something as shippers or retailers make money out of, which means that they are not going to pay the same price to the logistics service provider to handle returns. They are going to negotiate hard. I don't believe the LSPs have found a stable and consistent way to handle returns because of the ad hocism, because of the unpredictability associated. However, the ones who can formulate the strategy to handle the returns effectively will lead the race in the days to come. And 3PLs are best placed to do that. So outsourcing to a 3PL is the best option available in today's world. And from Ramco's logistics system, we enable and we support 3PL organizations to handle returns effectively. If I have to quote a couple of examples, we provide a transport management system which can connect to multiple carriers or marketplaces, truck owners, owner-operators, so that it can constantly match the opportunities with the capacity. When I say opportunities, I'm talking about orders, returns, empty returns, or backhaul, etc. So returns are effectively handled because there is a constant digital matchmaking of supply and demand. Similarly, we provide a warehouse management system which identifies the incoming shipments as returns from the normal receipts, and which also defines what inspection activities are to be carried out for those return items. How to classify a return? Is it a return to shelf, or return to a shipper, or return to service area for refurbishing based on the inspection outcome? And a warehouse management system which prompts the value-added services to be performed on the return item so that it can be used elsewhere. And finally, we provide a warehouse management system which is capable of cross-docking the return items to fulfill the back orders and open sales orders, only when certain inspection guidelines are met. So we need a transport management system which effectively handles returns. We need a warehouse management system, which is capable of handling returns, including cross-docking, value-added services, inspections, and taking necessary actions. I will play a simple video for a minute to show how Ramco warehouse management system handles the returns.
Excellent.
As shown in the system, here is the Ramco warehouse management system, which distinguishes returns from the receipts. A simple option to find the returns that have come into the warehouse. 1. So you will be able to drill down into the details. And 2, once the returns have reached the warehouse, you will have to perform the inspection and classify those items based on the inspection outcome. As you would see in this screen, execution of the inspection activity results in classifying items based on the inspection outcomes. As you would see, I will place a pointer. Yes. So the system comes up with recommendations saying that this can be put away. This has to be taken to cross-dock. This has to be returned to the shipper because it's damaged, or this has to be taken to quarantine. It has to be refurbished. So the system will provide or classify the items based on the inspection outcomes. 3, you can set value-added services for returns, because when returns come into the warehouse, usually the package is damaged. So the system will prompt saying that a certain packing has to be done before an item is moved from inspection to put away location. I will show a sample value-added service. Here we set up a value-added service which says that for this customer, the standard cost of this value addition is this. It takes so much of time, and if it moves from inspection to put away, this bubble wrap has to be done, and this is the consumable which has to be used. So you can set it up, and the system will ensure that this is performed when a return comes into the warehouse. And finally, when a return comes into the warehouse, the system can check the inspection outcome, saying that in this case, the package is intact, no damage identified, user guide is available, inspection checklist pass, which means that we can enable the cross-docking here. So this return item, which is in good condition, can be cross-docked to the back orders or new sales orders. So these are some of the subtle capabilities Ramco Warehouse Management System provides to handle returns. So 3PLs are in best position to handle them.
I think we got a question related to this from Karen Erickson. She says, great insights on reverse logistics. 3PLs also give you a clear cost per unit return. Many shippers don't accurately track the total cost to return. So who wants to handle that one? Sheldon?
Rajesh, right?
Oh, okay, Rajesh, that'd be good. Whoever wants to answer it, please answer.
Right. Joe, that's a great insight, Karen. I don't think, I need to add to this. And that's the biggest strength 3PLs bring to the table. They will provide the total cost of return, and that visibility is given to the shippers. So it's a statement Karen made, and I couldn't agree more. And that's the biggest strength 3PLs provide, to identify the total cost of returns and take necessary corrective measures.
Exactly. And I would also say that, with the more returns that is happening with e-commerce that you mentioned, Rajesh, this has become a bit bigger and bigger problem, obviously. And I will also say that, if you go to any warehouse where there are returns, it's usually the messiest area. It's a challenge for 3PLs because I don't think most systems could accommodate it. We're used to shipping out and not, and when you receive, it's new goods. It's not usually returns. So great points. So I'm looking here to see if we had any question pop up. Here it is. We got a question from Arvid. God, don't make me pronounce that last name. Maybe Rajesh could pronounce it. It says, hello, nice session. When considering warehouse optimization, where should organizations first start the process? So who wants to start?
I'll take that one.
Great.
So I think when you're looking into warehouse optimization, you should always start your workflow the moment the product arrives at the receiving dock. So when the product arrives, it's officially a part of your warehouse. So where you put that product, whether it's a slotting process that you're going to use, you got to check the product for damages, mispicks, quantity, and it's very important to give your employees at the receiving dock plenty of space. I've been to many warehouses where they didn't consider that, and you're mixing receiving product with used product or bad product. So just making sure you're allowing your staff to have adequate space to process the receiving when you're trying to optimize your workflow is going to be the best for your organization.
Yep. If maybe Michael, you could elaborate on this point. When we were prepping for this, I think Michael and Sheldon both said something that when they work with clients, that they often bump into companies that are saying, we have to expand, we have to get a new warehouse. And what you said is optimize the warehouse you have with the right systems and with the right processes. So Michael, why don't you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So optimizing anything is good, right? Well, optimizing one of your largest costs is outstanding. Utilizing the latest technologies helps achieve that. For instance, we performed a warehouse assessment and observed from one of our clients that space utilization was a quick win for them. But as we further conducted our assessment, we identified that inbound shipments weren't being optimized in the WMS and were left off for the warehouse staff to figure this task out on their own. The risk can be mitigated with automation of manual processes and tools to properly slot inventory to the most appropriate location for inbound, outbound products, which will lead to minimizing worker fatigue when fast-moving inventory isn't easy to reach or in locations that are accessible, and incurring unnecessary overtime pay during peak workloads. That's what you'd be looking to mitigate here. I think the biggest hurdle in warehouse optimization is overcoming the hurdle of realizing an overhaul of your operating model is desirable. I'll offer up a simple warehouse optimization tip. Clearly marking aisles and bin locations and proper labeling and signage and lighting alone can help reduce human error. That in itself could lead to costly shipping errors reduction. But you shouldn't believe, you wouldn't believe how many times companies are not willing to spend a little to get a lot in return.
Yeah, I like that. I like it. So you got to get the blocking and tackling right. Do that first, and then you're obviously going to need a good system. So Rajesh, why don't you answer? Why don't you talk a little bit about warehouse automation? But we got a question here from Nara R, and she says, will automated picking robots gain prominence post-COVID? How do warehouse management systems integrate with such robotic systems? Oh, that's a good one. Thank you, Nara. So Rajesh, we're putting that one on you.
Great, thank you, Joe. That has high relevance to us because one of the leading e-commerce logistics service providers in US, based in Atlanta, they run on Ramco warehouse management system, and we have integrated with a robotic system. It's called goods to person. In a conventional warehouse, the picker goes to pick the item. In the case of goods to person, the picker is stationary, the rack comes to the person, and it moves with great accuracy and great speed. So we know what it takes to do that. And to answer the question, post-COVID, yes, the implementation and adoption of robotic systems to perform the picking and put away will increase because of the regulations, new regulations, safety regulations that are coming to place. One, because of the distance, social distancing, as well as do more with less number of people. So these will become the new normal, because of which adoption of robotic systems will see an increase.
That's a great answer. And I would also say that, from everything I've read, the COVID e-commerce boom that we've seen, it isn't going to go back. People have got used to buying stuff online, especially groceries, as Michael mentioned earlier. So very important. So the one, I'm seeing a question that's popping up here. So hang on just a second. So this kind of brings us to the next topic. So let's talk a little bit about service level agreements. So I see a question here that says, it's from Mirtha. Thank you so much, Mirtha. It says, what are the typical KPIs that are measured in service level agreements? First off, Michael, why don't you start with this one and say, what is a service level agreement, and then talk about the typical KPIs?
Sure. Great question. So service level agreements define the level of expected services, and having SLAs is important for logistics providers because it lays the ground rules and metrics to which they agree to with their customers. It's a necessary evil. Having logistics command center with integrated ERP system with your TMS and WMS allows for real-time KPI monitoring and tracking, which automates the process and eliminates the need to having to do this manually. If done manually, it usually isn't performed timely. When performed timely, it can lead to increased customer service and satisfaction. So typical SLAs put pressure on the logistics provider to perform consistently over time. OTIF, which is on time in full. And another typical one you'll see is unit fill rates, measuring the throughput velocity. But one really important one for logistics providers is to include in your customers' SLA quarterly inventory turnover, because relying on your customers' forecasts when you quote them for services and plan your workforce around that can leave you with either too much or too little labor or assets. But in any event, it turns into a profit leak.
Right. I've always said, and said it only somewhat jokingly, that you want to measure the things that you get fired for. So late deliveries, if it's trucking, damage, if it's trucking. So, and I'm also a big believer that for those contracts, when you get that service level agreement, you got to get the whole team involved and figure out, don't just say, hey, this is what I think we should measure. Get the whole team involved, get the boss involved, get the customer involved. So Sheldon, why don't you continue on and add to what Michael said?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So actually that's like perfectly right on. So some of our clients that we noticed, they actually have trouble understanding their contract agreement with their 3PL and what their SLAs are. So if you have trouble understanding it, how do you hold these groups accountable? So building these measures into the agreement from the start is very important, but you have to also identify how you're going to measure these results. That's equally as important. Does your system support these reports or these service level agreements or KPIs that you're trying to manage? It's always easy to say, we're going to review X, Y, and Z, but actually having a system that can support that in real time to hold people accountable is going to be paramount to the success. Making sure you have root causes or when there's deviations against the KPIs in place for your organization is going to be the best solution in order to make sure that your organization can hold these groups and vendors accountable.
Yep. And I should also say, guys, while we're talking about KPIs, I always say this, only the most important metrics grow up to be KPIs. We're not measuring everything. No. We're going to measure the 4 or 5 things that if those are right, more likely everything else is right. So Rajesh, talk about how the systems can support measuring those KPIs, because they can be quite a job if you have to do it manually. Plus, people can game the system if they have to do it manually, because sometimes there's incentives to do so. So talk a little bit how we measure that with systems.
Great. Joe, there are well-established KPIs for transportation and warehousing. And if it's transportation, logistics is also about being able to deliver at a time frame, at the location, and at a price point the customer wants. And the retailers and shippers are racing against time to meet this expectation. And by doing so, they put the responsibility on the logistics service providers they work with. They define KPIs and service levels and attach incentives and penalties to them when they frame the contract with the service providers. This means that the logistics service providers, the 3PL companies, need a capable system to be able to record these service levels, to be able to track them, keep track of them, and receive alerts when they fall short of those service levels, and also provide this visibility into the performance against the service levels to the customers, so that the customers get more confidence and provide more wallet share to them. So it's 3 things. One is to be able to capture the service levels in the system, to be able to keep track of the service levels, to provide the visibility of their performance against these service levels to the customers, to inspire more confidence. And these are the 3 capabilities the system provides. I will quickly show how Ramco system enables this, the 3 points I talked about in the next slide. As the slides indicate, Ramco logistics application comes with a service level log, which highlights the logistics service provider's performance, agreed service levels across customers. It also presents a simple, intuitive screen to be able to define new service levels and color indications of performance levels. So it's not a static service level. Custom service levels can be defined across customers, and significance can be attached in color codes. And finally, the service levels can also be tracked by daily, monthly, or weekly. As you see, you can select a specific contract, you can select a specific customer, and you will be able to see how you are performing, a logistics service provider is performing on a monthly, daily, and weekly basis. And the system also comes with a standard report which highlights the deviations. The deviations report shows the orders that fell short of meeting the service levels so that you can take corrective measures. And there is something which I'm not showing here, which is Ramco also has a notification capability. So if the system senses that it's going to fall short of expectations in terms of service levels, it will send proactive notifications to the stakeholders saying that, hey, this order, I anticipate a drop in service level, so that you can take preventive measures. So these are the capabilities Ramco system provides to record the SLAs, to keep track of them, and then to provide the visibility to the customer through customer portal. And to answer the question previously that came up, for warehousing, the two most important KPIs, warehouse optimization initiatives target or companies want to measure are space utilization and resource productivity. And when I say productivity, I'm talking in terms of economy of movement and efficiency within the warehouse. I hope that answers the question, Joe.
I think it does. I think it does. So we got a question here from May, and the question is, what is the impact of forecast errors in warehouses? How to handle forecast errors once we measured it? So who wants to handle that one? Rajesh, want to give a shot?
Oh, certainly.
Forecast errors.
So, Milesama, it's a great question. The strength of forecast is always dependent on the volume of the data you have in place and the strength of the analytics system and the baselines and benchmarks you set for yourself. So it's a combination of multiple parameters, and the forecast is always subjective. So one, more the volume, better analytics, you will get the forecast right. And two, in Ramco Systems, we are also including artificial intelligence capability so that the system automatically adjusts the baseline and benchmark and take necessary measures so that the forecast is accurate. So one is strength of the data or volume of the data, and to be able to bring in artificial intelligence capabilities so that the data is properly mapped or orchestrated so that the forecast gets accurate. So it's an iterative process. You don't get this right on day one itself. It's an iterative process, but important analytics system, artificial intelligence capability, volume of data will make the difference.
Excellent, excellent. So I think we have another question here popping up on real-time visibility, which I'm glad we're going to get to that. So it says, other than track and trace, what other areas in visibility should 3PLs focus? Are new technologies industry ready to handle such dimensions? That's from Hari Shan. Who wants to handle that one?
Great. I'll take the question, Joe. The scope of visibility, as you rightly said, Hari, that's a great question. The scope of visibility is often confined to the location of the truck or status of the orders. As you rightly said, it's track and trace. However, the term visibility has a much broader scope and far-reaching role in logistics operations. I'll give some examples. In Ramco system, when we say visibility, we don't talk about track and trace alone. We refer to visibility into profitability and multifaceted profitability, visibility into cost and revenue leakages, visibility into events and alerts, visibility into revenue which sits in the pipeline. It's a classic case. Until the invoice reaches the finance department, the finance team will not have any knowledge of the amount of revenue sitting in operations. So to provide the visibility into the revenue which is in operations is a crucial factor. So visibility extends much beyond track and trace, and the primary ones are revenue leakages, cost leakages, multifaceted profitability, events and alerts, revenue, operational revenue. These are some of those. And today's systems, especially Ramco system, enables these visibilities through its capabilities.
Yep. If I could add something to that, I don't think you can get 3 or 4 logistics guys together without us using the term visibility, every other sentence. It's become the thing, right? And what you just described is if you were to think of a spectrum, one is being on the low end, just track and trace, and then get to that other end where real-time visibility of profitability. That's where we all need to get to. And I think, Rajesh, when we were prepping for this, we talked a lot about the idea of, what is real time? Because if your system's slow, if your systems are all disconnected, real time doesn't mean much, does it? Real time is after the fact. That's not real time. So sometimes we use these terms like visibility and real time visibility, and it really don't mean that. Being told you should have consolidated that shipment that left yesterday, that's not real time visibility. So, Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about real time visibility, and then we'll get Sheldon's 2 cents on it too.
Sure. So real-time visibility allows companies to pivot and reshape quickly if needed. Across the entire supply chain, shippers are demanding this. So for a logistics provider, you cannot ignore it because this is what can enable you to make better decisions faster, just as you suggested, Joe, with that shipment that needed to be consolidated. This is one of the hottest areas of the supply chain technologies, and there's a lot of new market entrants because being out for delivery is no longer acceptable response to your customer. And to optimize a logistics network takes end-to-end real-time visibility. From there, it can help avoid unnecessary idling costs. Another thing that Rajesh mentioned, which is painful to hear about, but performing services and it's sitting in, not generating an invoice or revenue, you could have some lost cash flow from that too. And from time to time, I've heard war stories about this.
Yeah, and what's always drives me crazy in trucking is when something delivers on a Friday and then 3 weeks later you get, there was detention or added to that, and you're like, why can't I know that the day of? You knew there was detention that day. Isn't there an easier way? Can I check a box that says, yeah, I knew there was detention that day? Instead, when you get it 3 weeks later after you've done your books and you said, I thought that was a profitable shipment, but not as profitable as I thought. So Sheldon, your 2 cents on real-time visibility. And then I'd like to come back to Rajesh. I think he's got a final thought on this. I can look in his face.
So real-time visibility from a customer standpoint is primarily track and trace, right? So that's becoming the new normal. In order to remain competitive, organizations are going to need the technology to compete. One of the first waves that we saw was where I want my order fast. I want it tomorrow, or I want it the next day. Now the next trend you're seeing is I need to see where my order is every step of the way, whether that's an alert, like Rajesh said, to your phone, or a customer portal I can log into to see where my truck is in my neighborhood. That's what businesses are going to need to start doing because that's what customers are expecting. Some of our customers are finding themselves in a pivotal point in their businesses. Margins are smaller, competition is higher, and customer demand is stronger than ever.
Yeah. And when we were prepping for this, we talked a lot about the idea that you have to have, if you're going to be profitable, you're going to have to automate some workflows, and you're going to have that customer experience that customers want. And we don't always have, when you say customer experience, that is a kind of a new frontier for us. We want that customers expect, they go on Amazon, they expect to have that great customer experience. And when you say, hey, go to our old antiquated green screen, they're not going to be happy. So
Absolutely right, Joe.
So Rajesh, final thoughts on this idea of real-time visibility and end-to-end visibility, I should say.
Yes, thank you, Joe. So we usually associate visibility with the customers, but my take is visibility applies to all the parties in the ecosystem, internal stakeholders to have better control over the operations, cost and revenue. External stakeholders such as partner and suppliers who need visibility into the data so that they can work towards a common goal. Or stakeholders such as customers who demand nothing but the best of visibility into the status of their orders, shipments, inventory, claims, etc. And we have built the same as part of Ramco's visibility capability. So my 2 cents are visibility applies to all the parties. It's both internal and external. I would like to show a few slides that demonstrate Ramco's capability on providing visibility or multifaceted visibility. So I'll show a few slides.
All right.
Great. The first one, let's take an internal stakeholder, a transportation planner. We have created a visualization tool for them to provide them the necessary visibility. So if I play the video, Great. We have set up. Great. Ramco Transport Management System generates trip plans for the drivers or subcontractors. But once these trip plans are created, the dispatcher can see them on a visual tool like this. He can see the trips. He can see the tasks assigned as part of the trips. He can click on the second icon. He can see the route suggested by the system. He can expand and he can review the routes. He can also place the cursor on the delivery points to review the ETA information, whether it matches with the service level expectations of the customer. He can also go back and click on the currency icon, which shows the profitability and resource utilization. Is this truck running full or optimally? It doesn't stop there. Like any other good dashboard, it provides drill down capability. The dispatcher can click on a trip. He can see the legs. He can see the consignments. He can see the packages. So he gets ultimate visibility in this visual platform. And he can also right click and make changes to the trip. A dispatcher comes with 20, 30 years experience. He wants to make changes. He thinks that he has better understanding than the system. He can make changes. And finally, on this tool itself, he will be able to see all the bookings to be planned. He can see the available resources such as vehicles and drivers. So, he can see all of the information he needs to perform his jobs. And the best part is he can simply drag and drop and create a trip. He can drag a vehicle and drop it on a booking. He can drag a driver and drop it into a vehicle and create a trip on the go. So it's a simple drag and drop, functionality.
I like it.
See, right. And the best part is he can also see the resources. And for example, I will show it in the a few seconds. He can always go to the tool. He can select a specific resource to see what jobs he is assigned and how much time he is engaged in a day so that he can utilize him for other activities. So that's the visibility we provide for an internal stakeholder. Quickly showing a couple of this. Let's take an external stakeholder, a customer, where the customer will be able to get the visibility he needs. Any customer can come to the website. They will be able to, pardon me. Okay, this is stuck, but in the interest of time, I will proceed to the next slides. Yes, this is another visibility we provide as part of utilization. A warehouse supervisor will be able to see how he is performing in terms of utilization. The color codes indicate fully occupied, partially occupied, the empty bins, so that he can take corrective measures. He can click on a bin, he can see the item stored. Another utilization, the warehouse supervisor will be able to see the status of the orders, how many are open, waived, picked, loaded, shipped. He can place the cursor on an outbound order and he can see what's the dispatch date, when is the picking expected to be completed. So all these visibility we provide to the internal stakeholders. And on top of it, we also provide a supplier portal and customer portal using which the customers and suppliers will be able to get the visibility they would like to see. So that's a capability I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, it's excellent. I like the idea that you're taking visibility beyond track and trace. And I think that we're also getting to a place where people say, I don't want to just know where my truck is. I want to know where my stuff is. I want to be able to go by part number. I want to be able to, nobody cares about where that trailer is unless their stuff's in it, right? And so I think we got some more questions. So we have some questions related to COVID. Surprise, surprise. How has COVID affected, and this is from Tim Montgomery. Thank you for the question, Tim. So Tim asks, how has COVID affected the logistics industry and 3PL so far? And what changes can we expect to see moving forward? So we'll start with you, Michael.
Okay, Joe. So with COVID, we've seen volumes up and down with huge surges with some products that are essential, like paper products, water, food, including alcohol in that, of course. And e-commerce shipments saw a major surge in many consumer product categories. With increased revenues, there's also increased costs. But for the most part, many logistics providers managed to navigate profitably through the unprecedented times. Air freight, unfortunately, is not included in that. And with so many grounded flights, so is that inventory. And in the coming weeks, I see a big demand that will arise and grow for cold storage supply chain, as a vaccine, once approved, will need to go mainstream distribution and providers that are appropriately licensed and can handle such goods will do quite well.
Yep. Great insights. And, Michael, we talked about when we were prepping for this, a lot of warehousing companies are struggling to get people to take these jobs right now because they might be at risk or they have kids at home and they can't take that job. And they're struggling. So you see some trucking companies are killing it. Others are suffering. But the volume is really high, which is making some of this really a challenge. So Sheldon, let's get your 2 cents and then we'll wrap it up with Rajesh on this one.
Yeah, so I agree with Michael completely. Some of the challenges that we've been seeing, I'm currently at a client inside of a hospital. And so since the volumes are very high, it makes getting the product even harder, especially for PPE that's required. And then when you are able to get it, what you're not seeing is the real-time visibility on when your truck's going to come. So it makes planning your labor management at the facility or warehouse hard to plan for to offload the goods. Not having both of those in sync can lead to product coming in not being received properly, just being put somewhere in a corner just to make space, which ultimately leads to hurting the organization because you can't find the goods that you originally purchased if they weren't signed for correctly. So definitely a lot of visibility issues with COVID coming up all around.
Right. And, when we talk about visibility, especially in regards to this, we're talking about, we're shorthanded. The last thing we need is to have stuff show up an hour late or not when my team is ready to unpack it. Right. So, talk a little bit about this, Rajesh, and what you've seen with the COVID and how Ramco is helping some of their customers.
Joe, Michael has summarized it quite well. I agree with Michael. Post-COVID, it's going to be a great time for the logistics industry because every industry will want to do the catch-up. They will have to compensate. They will try to compensate for the lost time and lost opportunities, which means that the demand is going to see a huge surge while the capacity is limited, which means that the profitability will go up. And this will call for closer collaboration between the logistics companies, which means that logistics companies will have to invest in technology. Besides, because of all these regulations, the new normal which has come into place, social distancing and limited people, and they have to invest in technology to be able to compensate for the less number of people. So technology investment will increase, closer collaboration will happen, and it's a great time for logistics companies because the demand is huge and the logistics service providers will be able to call the shots. That's how I see post-COVID.
Yep. Well, we covered a lot today, guys. We're like 6 minutes to the top of the hour, so let's get some final thoughts from everybody. So, and we covered quite a bit. Michael, why don't you give us some put a bow on this topic, all these topics.
So, just as final thoughts, I think the biggest hurdle here that I see is overcoming the hurdle of realizing that you need help and an overhaul of your technology and operating model. I think that's desirable. And knowing when the right time is, how to determine the anticipated ROI from your investment is a big question. A huge challenge in the logistics space is companies are unable to truly know their costs. I think we heard that throughout this and the need for visibility. And getting to that information timely has been an issue. And that's where having real-time reporting and accessibility is really critical. And at Mazars, we're focused on helping our clients along the journey and having a digital strategy focused on real-time profitability at the forefront. Not having timely and, more importantly, accurate financial data while running and operating a logistics business equates to being left in the dark and leaves you with a business strategy of hope. Face it, profits and cash flow solve or mask a lot of inefficiencies. And when that changes, they can be really exposed.
Yep. I can say this from my own perspective. When I was at a 3PL, we had a system and it was much better than not having a system. And we would have scorecards and we would review our scorecards with our clients. And then they'd say, don't do this anymore. And I was like, God, it's easier said than done because we didn't know it until we started crunching the numbers. We lost money on this. Oh, I thought we made money on that. This could have been consolidated. These two shipments could have been consolidated. Only after the fact do we learn these things. So we would try and implement business rules that would prevent this stuff. But now what I'm hearing from you guys is There's systems that we can use to make that happen real time. So don't tell me next week. Tell me right now while I'm doing it. So continue on that topic. Wrap this up for us, Sheldon, and then we'll ask Rajesh.
Yeah, so I think Michael kind of said it great. With the need for new technology, implementations are going to come around, but there's also a huge piece, like Michael said, we do in Mazars, which is the change management function, right? How do I implement these systems? What processes need to change across my organization, right? How do I use them inside the warehouse, outside the warehouse? How do we get the analytics out? So Mazars can kind of help in that way as well. So that's something to think about as well when you're implementing the new technology, is the change management pieces across my organization.
Yep, there's best practices out there, and there's the technologies out there. So if you want to get better, you can. So Rajesh, you'll have the final word on this topic, or I should say, wrapping up all these topics.
Thank you, Joe. So I agree with Michael and Sheldon. The way I see it is there is a huge room for improvement in logistics industry. Despite all the chest beating that logistics is the backbone of the economy, it's still a little sluggish. Because if I have to give some examples, 30% of the logistics capacity goes unutilized. And freight forwarders still take 3 to 4 days to provide a quotation. Or some of the technology investments which were invented decades ago are still yet to be adopted. So there is a huge room for improvement, and the logistics industry can do well with optimization and contribute better to the economy. So for the industry as well as to the service providers, it's great times ahead.
Yep. Since we're wrapping this up, Rajesh, if you don't mind me asking you to do this, could you talk about how if someone wants to learn more, they want to reach out and talk to Ramco and or the fine folks over at Mazars, tell us how we can go about it. Oh, actually, somebody pulled some information up here, and it says, to know more, contact at ramco.com. And then also there's a little note that says enterprise technology at mazarsusa.com. Not as easy, guys, but I think if you reach the Ramco guys, you'll be able to reach the Mazars guys. And again, it's Ramco, it's contact at ramco.com, and then it's enterprise technology at Mazars, and that's MAZARS USA.com. And I want to thank you, gentlemen, for a great discussion, and I want to thank all the people who behind the scenes of the Ramco people, Toman and Raghu and Artika, and then that I want to say Prakash, but I'm sure that's the wrong name. So thank you all so much for setting this up, and I think it was a great discussion.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure.
Very great.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great